Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a lead fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. Every week, I get to interview a green building professional somewhere in the world. And today, I've got Erica Weeks with us. She's Associate Principal, Director of Sustainability. She's a lead fellow based in Nashville, Tennessee. And we're going to get to know her more in her green building journey. Erica, how you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being patient to get you on the podcast. I've been wanting to do it for a while, and here we are. So can't wait to learn a little more about your story. I know we're connected through our lead fellow group, and heck, we just like to fight the good fight with green building. So with all of my podcast guests, I ask them, hey, take us back. So what's your origin story? Where did you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Yeah, so I grew up in Western Massachusetts. And I moved to Tennessee to go to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville for architecture school. But my sort of upbringing in Western Massachusetts was where I first started thinking about sustainability, not necessarily in the built environment, but just in the general way of doing things. Because as you learn things as you grow up as a kid, and then you move to other cities and locations and wonder why they don't do something the same or they do something the same. You know, that's sort of a pondering. But really through my architecture career, I went to University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I came over here to Nashville for my first job out of school. We were here about 4 years. Then was fortunate to go to San Francisco for 4 years, where practicing in the Bay Area, of course, a little different than practicing maybe some other places, and just sort of ingrained in green being the right thing or sustainability being the right thing versus just being it sort of a have to or, you know, an afterthought or anything like that. And after those 4 years, we're able to come back here to Nashville, Tennessee and be able to find a great firm like Hastings, where they had started a studio specifically for sustainability and to support office efforts as well as help external customers really propagate the Middle Tennessee and then region beyond in the realm of the built environment and sustainability.
Love that origin story. So a little to unpack there. Did you always know you wanted to go architecture route? Did you find that out when you ended up at college? Like, how did you know to go that direction?
Sure. Yeah. So architecture had been an interest of mine in high school when I was fortunate to take high school drafting. You know, I was, quote, one of the smart kids and everyone always thought I was in band, but I wasn't. I was in drafting. So I don't play any musical instruments, but through that, it was just thinking about space and also a background in also some art, some painting. So just thinking about space in a different way. And really coming to University of Tennessee was they start you on design day one versus some other places. Maybe do a lot of your core curriculum. You know, you do your English 101, all that kind of stuff. But it was like, if I wanted to do this, I wanted to dive into design and dive into thinking about space and the relationship with space right away, just in case I didn't like it. And it turns out that my love of puzzles and figuring out the puzzles given to me really fit really well into the realm of architecture.
Thanks for connecting the dots. I know sometimes we go off to college if we're so fortunate and not sure what we want to do, but sometimes we get guided, sometimes we have mentors. And that's kind of my next question is sometimes a mentor is someone you look up to. You might read their books, follow them. You never have direct access, but they influence you. Sometimes a mentor is someone that truly you get to meet with in person, or maybe they opened a door for you. So are there any mentors that you've had along the way?
So along the way, I've been fortunate where I was always encouraged through college and then through professional career, even now. Like, if there's just someone interesting that I want to talk to, there's no reason you just can't reach out and say, hey, you know, I saw this paper you wrote, or I saw this article that you were featured in or something. Can you tell me a little bit more about this project? And you'd be surprised how many people actually reply back and, you know, maybe have a follow-up conversation. But sort of early on, I really thought that, you know, job shadowing So going through in high school, a couple places that were local to Western Massachusetts to just sit and see what an architect does all day. I wouldn't call those a direct, one-on-one mentor, but at least like seeing the sort of day-to-day or what you could expect. How many people don't spend a lot of time drawing during the day, right? You spend a lot of time managing and then doing other things. So that was kind of eye-opening. And then probably when I got into college, it was more along the lines of professors that I had, just encouraging, just ways to think about things differently or really opening up. When you go to architecture school and you have the whole studio process and you get critiqued almost on a daily basis, you begin to think about things a little bit differently. Also, how am I going to say this? How am I going to present this? How am I, do I know my audience? So I think a lot of that coaching has really helped in the sustainability realm later, because it's like, how am I going to present this different idea to a client when I know how they might react if I say it one way versus if I say it another way? So
that's really good. I love that. But don't be bashful to reach out. I mean, I think we're in this industry that people want to share and collaborate and, all those best practices. So let's get back to sustainability. I mean, when did that really start showing up? Like, when did you first hear about LEED, for example?
Sure. So pretty much out of school, I got my first LEED AP credential in 2006. So I had been practicing for about 3 years and, could see it as the wave of the future and say, hey, I need to be on the forefront of this. And because I do love to learn and I love continued learning, you might see by the other credentials that I have, that's just something that why not? Why don't I go out and learn a new thing that helps, me think about projects differently. So really from 2006, and we were fortunate in Middle Tennessee to be starting a USGBC chapter, where there were, again, folks that I knew in town who were able to, let me come to events and start doing things with the chapter. Then, like I said, we went to California for those 4 years. And, there was a lot of stuff, even just AIA related to sustainability. And then coming back here, I really got involved with the USGBC chapter to make sure that I was also bringing things that I had learned back here to Middle Tennessee.
Well, you have a lot of credentials. I'm a fan of credentials. Let's talk about what that's meant. I mean, I know you have several, even Sites AP, pretty much all the LEED credentials. So, it sounds like you love to learn, but for some, they'd be like, God, it's painful to take all those really hard exams. But how did you stack those? What have credentials meant for you?
Credentials, I think, are really important, not just to me, but to the industry, just from that continued learning, but also just maintaining those credentials, doing the continuing education that actually has to get done so that you are staying up to date with what you need to from a rating system aspect. And if I'm working on projects and we're doing those rating systems and I'm brought in as, the expertise on that, I feel it's, professionally important to be able to have that credential, to be able to cite somebody, an expert level critique of what they're doing or how we can manage that, or even compare, fit well to weld to LEED, or how do they also intersect, or those types of things. So, one, from a credibility standpoint, and two, just from that continued learning. It's I always want to be up on the latest research. I always want to be up on the latest trends. I want to be able to ask, how many people are doing this credit and being successful at it? How can we do it better or differently? And you really need that baseline knowledge before you really can even start a project. Sometimes is, you don't want to prepare a scorecard for LEED particularly and put a lot of, I don't want to say, too high arching goals, but you want to be realistic for some clients too and say, you can only really be a silver project unless we do this, and this. And you need to be able to know what those credits mean and how those credits are applied, or if that building type is going to be applicable to something versus another building type.
Wow. No, you're so right there. And, not every building can go for LEED and not every building can go for gold or platinum. And there's a reality check along the way. But let's do one more look back and then you'll tell us more about some projects you're working on. So what are some of your proudest accomplishments, Erica, as we look back?
Well, of course, proudest accomplishment recently becoming LEED fellow. So recognized in the industry, but there are some things project related that I think are really important and maybe, smaller, granular, but, taking a win every time we're able to divert, over 80-85% of our construction waste because we've done a lot of digging and figuring out how we can actually recycle some materials that might be really hard to recycle or do something different there. Also project wins like, actually implementing rainwater collection for toilet flushing and getting that on a project, debating whether it's cost prohibitive or not cost prohibitive, but what are you going to save in water? And now, especially with the tide of, saving water saves energy, saves carbon. So it's like, how do we tie that all together? But I think too, some of my proudest moments are personal where, I can do a lot of dog training, and some of those things that we do competition wise are pretty exciting, sort of just to get out and be thinking again, spatially and dynamically with your dog partners out there. Really, really captures some, fun, and also kind of frees your mind to think about some other things and come up with some solutions while you're doing it.
Oh, that's so cool. We have a few dogs here and a few young boys in my house. We have a full house. So I don't know a lot about the training side of it. Are there certain breeds of dogs that are easier to train than others? And maybe you have a tip here. It sounds like you do the competition side of things, but I'm sure you maybe a dog whisperer, it sounds like. Any tips for anyone that's maybe new to having a dog as part of their household?
Yeah, there's definitely some breeds that lean into it. And you have the working type breeds that are happy to do things over and over again and get rewarded. So, Border Collies, Labradors, that's typically what we've had. But if you just get into dog training and you just do that repetition, feed them a small snack, have them do a trick, have them learn left and right, have them go to the car, whatever you need them to do. I mean, there's basic life skills, right? Like making sure they come when called.
That's great. That positive reinforcement.
Right.
So cool. Well, congrats on your Elite Fellow and all the amazing projects you've worked on. So now let's talk present day. Tell us more about your firm. Tell us more about what a director of sustainability does at a firm like yours in Nashville.
Yeah, sure. So our firm, Hastings Architecture, we're located in Nashville, Tennessee. We're just about 100 people in architecture, interior design, and our fantastic support staff. We do almost every type of architecture, everything from multifamily, academic, office. We really don't focus on healthcare too much, probably the one sector that we're not in. But my role in the firm is to help guide all of our projects from an energy code standpoint and from some sustainability feature standpoint. And then especially projects that are pursuing rating systems, primarily LEED, help facilitate and do documentation for those projects. A little different than in some firms, I also manage our external consulting. So it means projects that we are not the architects of. We have customers that come to us for our sustainability consulting, primarily again for LEED rating systems. And we help support those architects, contractors, or engineers with an array of different services to be able to help whatever they need to get their projects done. And that could be full like LEED facilitation documentation, or that could be just some specific credit help. Maybe a contractor needing some of the help with materials tracking, waste diversion, those types of things. So, and we've been doing that in the firm since 2008. And I joined in 2011.
Wow. So a whole other offering, not just for your own projects, but as a consulting service. Now, what are some of your favorite types of projects to work on? You've got LEED and WELL and sites and all these great programs, but maybe even a certain building type that's just fun. Where do you find joy? What kind of projects?
Yeah. So great. Oddly enough, I really enjoy a core and shell office where we can implement some things that are visible for future tenants. So, for example, we've done some core and shell office buildings through Fitwell, where there's quite a few things that are sort of pointable, if you will. Different types of signage to say, hey, can you take the stairs, or don't take the elevator, get your steps in, which also helps us inform the team to perhaps design their initial lobby and how you access the stairs a little bit differently. Those types of things have been super fun. And also incorporating some fitness elements, walking trails, fitness benches. You'd be surprised on the market, when I was looking for some different fitness benches to sort of aesthetically fit in with some other furniture, how many places just have sort of what looks like adult playground equipment and, it's all brightly colored and, sort of bent metal. But so we've been having some custom like sit-up benches and things like that made here at a local cabinetry shop that then get sent across the country to one of our customers' different office buildings. So that's been also kind of a fun activity, is to sort of source some different things that we have potentially in the past.
I love that, because there's so many different ways to do sustainability or best practice, or this is going to rub off on this project. They might do it 10 more times. And I can tell you, like, not just the net zero building here, like it's these small things too that really add up. And I can tell you, you really enjoy your work. Well, that's fantastic. Anything else in your kind of day-to-day role? I mean, any other kind of volunteering with local chapters or internal internship programs or tutoring, or where else do you spend some of your time?
Yeah, so this summer, it was great. We had a fantastic summer intern from one of our local universities who was studying mechanical engineering. And us as a firm, like I said, we have only architects and interior designers. So it was fun to have someone who did think a little bit more on the mechanical side to help with some specific lead credits and creating a bunch of how-to documents that I can use to help others in the firm learn a little bit more about the engineering side of things. Otherwise, within the local community, I sit on the board for our USGBC Market Leadership Advisory here in Tennessee. I've been doing that for quite a while. I'm also on the board for the Tennessee Environmental Council. And it's a pretty exciting year for us because through the last many, many years where we do a plant a tree campaign, this year will be the 1,000th tree planted for Tennessee Environmental Council across the state of Tennessee, where they plant trees in every county within the state on Tree Day. And that's coming up here in March.
Cool.
And then I'm sitting on the board here for Urban Green Lab, which is here in Middle Tennessee, an educational outlet for all things related to sustainability for households, workplace, and for classrooms. So they have 3 leaders within that nonprofit organization that do a lot of community outreach so that they can help inform, if you're a workplace, they can come in, tell you how to recycle better, how to teach your people to recycle better. What does it mean if you're going to install EV charging? Like a bunch of different things just related about sort of that everyday sustainability. So that's pretty cool to see that, grow throughout the county. And they have a great sort of ambassador program once they have everyone go through all the training to be able to then repeat, and hopefully, have everyone recycle, right, by a certain point of time, right? So,
hey, it's one of my big pet peeves is recycling. At our sustainability firm, we do a lot of LEED for existing buildings, and so we do a lot of waste audits, waste and recycling audits, and it's 50-story buildings in New York City. Man, there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of things that are being thrown in the trash that could have been recycled. So we could talk all day long about that. So I love it. I love hearing about what you're doing with your sustainability team, your company, some amazing projects, and all this volunteer work too. All right, so let's talk about the future. What are you excited about that's coming at us? What do you think's kind of coming soon in the green building movement? What are you excited about?
So currently excited about, because I do a lot of LEED projects, LEED version 5. And I sit on the USGBC's water tag. I'm the vice chair here for 2024. So also getting sort of a pre-look here before it goes out for public comment, just to see how we can again move the bar. People are still looking for some of the easy prescriptive credits, but how can we again push that boundary, and how can we make people maybe think a little bit differently on what they're doing, beyond, for example, if I can use it from water, low flow and low flush fixtures, right? We've gotten to the point where technology has given us what we can kind of do with those fixtures. So what are we doing, with reuse? How are we collecting water? How are we thinking about water maybe in different ways? So I can see that as the next sort of wave, pun intended, of things that, are coming down the line as people are starting to think about, how do we again push the boundary, push the market, and make more substantive changes. I have a lot of people who I work with on a daily basis who maybe haven't done a LEED project. They say they did one 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was. So, even LEED version 4 is, still shocking to them. So again, it's like kind of bringing them up and bringing them towards what they can think about for their next couple of projects, even if it might be, again, a span of years between when they do them.
I love that. So LEED version 5, let's give a little public service announcement here to those listening. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, but what I've heard, and you've probably heard more than me, is, well, they promise not to change it again until 2030, so that's good news. But we've got LEED version 5, right? It's this program that's over 20 years, globally recognized, and in the USGBC and leadership there, Peter Templeton and others, right? They're going to expand it to include a lot of neat things around equity and embodied carbon and EV readiness and so much more. So I think it's exciting. I agree with you. Now, tactically, I know we've got LEED for existing buildings O&M that they released a draft of at Greenbuild. We're just now seeing pieces, I think, as this podcast is coming out, of LEED BD plus C. So I don't know, what else do you know? And how do you suggest our listeners even tackle that, knowing you might not be forced to use LEED version 5, probably best case till next year?
Yeah. So I think everybody who is in the green building space, it'll be open for public comment. So if there is something that you find challenging or you think isn't going to work in your market or your building type, USGBC would really like feedback, because they don't want also what happened when version 4 came out and it was seemed too radical of a change, that then they had to go to 4.1 that kind of lessened or eased up on a few of the requirements to make them smaller bites, versus just go ahead and adopt the new rating system when it passes by ballot. So, I encourage everybody, even if you have just one favorite credit, go read that credit language, make sure you still agree with it, or say, post a comment and say, how the heck do we do this? Or how do I do this on this building type? Because even though there's a great group of people, working on this, there could be a building type, or there could be something that we don't know from just the industry, that your feedback is really important.
And I think that's what sometimes maybe we forget is our companies are USGBC member companies. We have a say, we have a vote, but just in general, right? You're right. You can go on these and make comments, right? If we have a chance to adapt it a little bit more. But LEED version 5, hey, I'm excited about it. It sounds like you are too. And we have a little bit of time, but we got to read up on it now. So anything else as you look to the future, anything else? Obviously we have healthy buildings, we have smart buildings, and I don't know, what else are you seeing out there?
So I think a lot of questions that come into our office are still very much energy efficiency related, water efficiency related, things that are going to give customers return on investment. Because a lot of times we're working with metro government clients or folks that have to defend their choices, if you will, on the front end when they're designing their project buildings. So those are still, I think, going to be things even into the future, giving a payback, understanding what that return on investment is, even if you're sort of cutting it in a few different ways between energy, carbon, water, whatever it might be, I think are still going to be really important metrics. So we don't want to lose sight of those. The other thing that I see just growing really strong in the industry is the AIA's framework for design excellence. And I've been a part of a couple of different task force around that, where if you're not familiar, the AIA has posted 10 different measures or 10 different principles around energy, resources, water, integrated design discovery, and has a slew of resources as well as a slew of case studies, because many of the projects that attempt awards through the AIA have to report on many of these measures as part of their award submittal. So if you're looking for general case studies about energy or general case studies about, how to be best practices with resources or well-being, looking at the framework for design excellence and going into some of those resources has been really helpful. And I think with the AIA's big push in 2024, education-wise around the framework, I'm excited to see more and more folks use it. It pop up more and more in award submissions, and people have more conversations maybe when they're starting projects about how do these principles fit in, to what we're designing already versus what might be a stretch goal. And can we do this on this project?
That's well said. I mean, it's so many different projects. Sounds like you and your team work on all kinds of different projects. So it's cool just to see how you can apply all of this. And, I know our ultimate goal is not just LEED Platinum, net zero, one day even regenerative design, but we've got to, you can't jump straight to that, right? There's a certain order that these things kind of need to happen.
Right.
So let's shift to a little more focus on you. Some rapid fire questions here, Erica, in our podcast. I like to ask, for example, what is your specialty or gift?
My specialty or gift? Well, personally, I am a dog whisperer. I mentioned that. So normally I do get pulled into some folks in the office, but they are asking about how to train their dogs to do certain things. But from a sustainability standpoint, I am an architect, but I've leaned so much into engineering. My special or magic talent is reviewing energy model exports based on all the different versions of ASHRAE, as well as the different performance rating methods that now we have to use from LEED version 4 and LEED and into LEED version 5. So kind of looking at that from a future state of, a lot of folks have kind of avoided changing that method and we're using it. So how to actually get, bang for the buck out of it and understand what we have to design to.
Super cool. Love that. Do you have any good habits or routines, rituals that help you stay on point?
Habits and rituals to stay on point. Yeah, I am a big fan of task lists or to-do lists and organizing them in ways that say, like, this is the top priority for today versus this is something that might be able to punt till tomorrow because you're also going to have 10 other things come up in your day that will make you punt to something till tomorrow. So just trying to stay organized with that task list and to-do list to be able to understand, those priorities and how to do things that you need personally and professionally.
I'm a fan of the to-do list, but I do it sometimes. I try to plan my week ahead of time. And then the night before, I will look at the next day and then the morning of, because I think you have to train your subconscious some, right? To kind of, hey, here's the big things I got to get to.
Right.
In case I get distracted, I'm almost programmed to get back to what I really hopefully wanted to do.
Right. There's one other tip that I really like to be prepared for a meeting like 2 days in advance of the meeting when I'm doing a lot of presenting or when I have to explain something maybe to a client or to a consultant team. Because normally if you wait till the last minute and try to get prepared right before, inevitably things are going to come up all before that meeting and you're not going to feel as prepared as you need to. So I try to think ahead 2 days and say, do I have the slides I need together? Have I pulled the examples that I need? How am I going to talk about this? So that way I can review it quickly before the meeting, but I'm not sort of in that scramble to try to get, a presentation or something together right before a meeting when, 12 other things have happened.
That's smart. 2 days ahead of time. I love that because things are going to come up, right? All right. Those are great tips. Next, I'd love to ask about a bucket list. Not everybody has a bucket list. I personally am a fan of a bucket list, but what are one or two things, Erica, maybe on your bucket list? Some people like travel or adventure or maybe write a book or who knows, win the biggest dog competition out there. I don't know. What's the bucket list? I
haven't been to Arizona and the Grand Canyon in a long time. And I would really love to go walk out of the glass walkway.
Oh, I see that.
Over the canyon. It's like I've seen pictures of it. I know people have gone to it, but I haven't done it myself. And it's like I need to carve out some time to go do that.
Okay, that's a great one. I've not done that. It looks so cool. Any interest in other travels or adventure outside the U.S. or anywhere you also want to go to one day?
Well, from a travel perspective, I tend to lean into going to places that are a little bit more familiar and maybe just relaxing than someplace new where you might not know how to get to.
Don't know your way around.
Don't know your way around. And then you spend all your time like looking at your phone trying to figure out how you're going to get somewhere.
That's right.
So from that aspect, it's a little bit more, staying closer to home or staying closer, to different places in the U.S. Like going to see you in Atlanta, that kind of thing. Figuring out and knowing sort of just the main routes around Atlanta.
Well, come on down to Atlanta. Atlanta's got a lot to offer. And my wife says, is it a trip or is it a vacation, right?
Right.
Busy and packed agenda, or is it like, no, we can relax, or I kind of know what to expect, or maybe we have a day with the no plan, those kind of things. Yeah.
Right.
Love that. All right, cool. Well, let me know when you get to that glass outlook, that lookout, the Grand Canyon. Shoot me a message. I'd love to know you did that. So a few more questions here. This has been fantastic. Is there a good book you'd recommend for our listeners? It doesn't even have to be about buildings.
So I am a big fan of all the works that Stephen Kellert, former professor at Yale and one of the fathers of biophilic design. Those books I have of his are, tattered with sticky notes and marks, because as we try to implement, not just plants and buildings and thinking about that sort of direct connect with nature, but, how do we implement all these other actual design features to make people feel connected with culture, feel connected with ecology? And I think, that's just getting increasingly important as we do talk about more equitable social responsibility issues and making sure that people have access to things that they need to feel connected. So I'm constantly, if you put into your favorite search, anything by Stephen Kellert, any of his books, really, you could find, so many different nuggets of information that, you're going to have a light bulb moment on.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put a link to some of those books in our podcast show notes. So
awesome.
Click those. Just two final things I'd love to ask you about is, one, as you look back on your career, is there anything you wish you'd have known earlier? Any career advice you wish you'd have known earlier?
Career advice that I wish I had known earlier. I think, me transitioning from I spent the first 10 years being what I lovingly call a regular architect, meaning working on, projects and doing the regular developing of drawings, developing of concepts, and then transitioning, in 2011 to the consulting side and really looking at the rapid pace of moving information between project teams. I think that would have been something to, acknowledge. And when I talk to students now who are in architecture school or like my mechanical engineering intern, they're so focused on, I'm going to school for this one subject, but there are so many subjects like to the left and the right, that you can do from a consulting aspect, from a different way you think about your position in a firm, because you have a certain subject matter expertise that, I think looking back is trying to figure out that maybe earlier that, you can have these you just don't have to be the project architect because you went to architecture school. And that's what you're assigned to do. Like, there's so many different things that you can find really enjoyable within the bubble of the built environment.
It would have been great to just have that intention a little earlier. I love that you've shared that with our listeners. And so that's some really cool wisdom there. So thank you for that. All right, my last question. I'm having a lot of fun here is, let's say someone's listening to this podcast. They're getting super stoked to hear your journey and they're just jumping into the green building movement right now. You've been doing it a while. I've been doing it a while. Maybe they're later in their career making a change, or maybe they're a young professional and just passed their lead grant associate. If someone's just now jumping in to this green building movement, any words of encouragement for them as we come to a close?
Sure. Words of encouragement for somebody entering the career, whether fresh out of school or whether they are switching careers. I think, knowledge is key. I think there's a lot of greenwashing out there in the industry, from vendors, from product manufacturers, and really figuring out, when you listen to someone talk about something sustainability wise, why was that really a sustainable solution for the product, for the project, and understanding like how that actually could be repeatable or applicable. Because there's so many times that somebody will send me something, from somebody in the office will be like, look, this product will get us, 10 lead points. And it's like, well, not really, not really, because they're not really, talking about it in all the ways they should. So I think just that, having that little bit of, sense about greenwashing and sense about like everything that we deem as sustainable might not be sustainable for every single project type or every single client. So really having to focus and understand what are the goals and what is the goal of picking that material versus what is the goal of, doing something energy related for another client. So just that kind of, what you would call it, but just that kind of cynicism or that kind of like, asking the question and seeing like, okay, someone says this is the answer, but how do I backtrack and figure out what the puzzle was that they were trying to solve before I then, tell the client we should use this on every single project.
Those are great words of encouragement here. Erica, thank you for being on the podcast today. Everyone listening, check out the book recommendations, connect with Erica on LinkedIn, reach out, let her know what you thought of the podcast, and just, hey, keep up the great work you're doing with your sustainability team, not just on your projects, but even handling some other really cool sustainability projects. So, Erica, thanks for being on the podcast today. This was great.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.